This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Gidu-Yuwat. It's Tuesday, June 22nd. This is Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in East Africa, where vote counting is underway in Ethiopia's long-delayed parliamentary election, viewed as a major test for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who described the poll as the nation's first attempt at free and fair elections. Africa 54 managing editor Vincent Makori has more.
Abiy, who cast his ballot before a throng of supporters Monday, ushered in a shift from decades of authoritarian rule. But the war waged in the Tigray region and accusations of election abuse has raised concerns about him and his party. Voting lasted into the night after authorities kept polls open an extra 3 hours in the capital, Addis Ababa.
I have been here 3 hours, just standing on the keys. But these 3 hours determines my 5 years life, because I have to elect who is going to administer me.
International concern has been growing about the political environment in the country, and opposition groups have accused Ethiopia's ruling party of harassment, manipulation and threats of violence that echo abuses of the past.
In the Amhara region and in the south, there is an additional serious problem that we have observed, which is in a number of places they have kicked out our observers, or they wouldn't allow them from the beginning, starting from the morning. We have compiled this, we have informed the election board about this, we have also informed the authorities, hoping that there would be some solution to this before one could conclude in any form or shape that this is a reflection of the overall process.
Votes are already being counted in the capital and in more than 100 of the country's 547 constituencies. Polls were not open in the Tigray region because of the ongoing war in the north and the logistical issues elsewhere. No date has been set for voting in Tigray, likely delaying the final results.
That was Africa 54 managing editor Vincent Makori reporting. No date has been set for voting in Tigray, likely delaying the final results. Ayalew Wedajo was born during the reign of an emperor and has lived under a brutal Marxist regime and 3 decades of iron-fisted rule in which his son was killed. With Ethiopians voting in Monday's election, he is now hopeful for peace. David Doyle reports.
Before casting his vote in Ethiopia's election on Monday, Ayalew Wedajo said a prayer for his son. Gaetanet was killed in pro-democracy protests 16 years ago.
Let our children be the last who died like this. Let it all be enough for the Ethiopian people.
Ayalew's life and the tragedy it has contained reflects Ethiopia's tumultuous political history. He was born during the reign of Emperor Haile Selassie, last of a line of kings who traced their blood back to the biblical King Solomon. Ayalew remembers streets filled with soldiers and helicopters flying low in 1974. A military coup had ousted the emperor. A brutal Marxist regime known as the Derg then ruled until 1991. That was when rebels, spearheaded by fighters from the northern Tigray region, seized power. They were the Tigray People's Liberation Front. When Ayalew and his neighbours spilled onto the streets, they didn't realise they were welcoming 3 decades of iron-fisted rule.
When the previous regime came into power, we Ethiopian people thought it would be something better than the Derg. We accepted them. We thought it would be better, but it wasn't.
It was under the rule of the TPLF that Ayalew's son was killed. Most elections had been marred by rigging and repression, but in 2005 the opposition swept the capital Addis Ababa and won an unprecedented 147 out of 547 parliamentary seats. A subsequent crackdown killed hundreds and thousands were arrested. Ayalew says his son had dropped off a friend and was just standing there when he was hit by a bullet. Years of increasingly bloody anti-government protests finally forced the Prime Minister to resign in 2018. Abiy Ahmed was appointed Prime Minister by the ruling coalition. He's brought in sweeping political and economic reforms, though some opposition parties say those freedoms are now being rolled back. Rights groups have also accused Abiy's government of abuses in its war with the TPLF, which broke out in November. Abiy's billed Monday's vote as Ethiopia's first attempt at free and fair elections and said the country would show it can hold a peaceful poll. And Ayalew is hopeful.
What we saw happen back in 2005, all that happened then, we don't want that to happen again. But I think that this one will be more peaceful. That's what I can see.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. The Voice of America continues to highlight the very serious plight of refugees. Forced displacement is an everyday concern for more than 80 million people worldwide and for the people who see migrants moving into their communities. VOA's latest English language documentary sets out to hear as many of those perspectives as possible.
It's 0 hours of the 20th of June.
It's 2019. Maritime police from Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, will search for refugees trying to cross from Turkey into Greece. This year, more than 50 people have died trying to cross. 2 this month. At the same time, it is early morning in Indonesia. Attendees at morning prayers will include Afghans who fled here. They thought they would be safe once in the world's largest Muslim country. The reality is different. In the United States, volunteers will wait near a border overwhelmed by migrants who are willing to risk it all.
Everything you have ever had, everyone you have ever known, and flee to a country that you know is in all likelihood going to be hostile to you. But that's your only choice.
Around the world, dignitaries and refugees will mark World Refugee Day. A single day representing a worldwide crisis that on this day seems to be only getting worse. These are just a few of the more than 70 million stories that can be told this day. On this single day, Voice of America sends more than 75 photojournalists to tell those stories. June 20th, 2019. It is World Refugee Day, the last World Refugee Day before the COVID pandemic.
It's important that people are aware it's everyone's problem.
A day like any other day in the life of refugees.
Our English-speaking viewers can catch the full film at voasnews.com/refugees and let us know what you think of it via social media. Hollywood star Angelina Jolle criticized the international community's response to militant violence in the Sahel as she visited Malian refugees at a camp in Burkina Faso. Nega reports.
Hollywood actor Angelina Jolle was in Burkina Faso on Sunday. As a special envoy for the UN's refugee agency, Jolle was visiting the Gudubu camp. It's home for those who fled violence in neighboring Mali.
I'm honored and I'm grateful to be among you, and I bow my head in respect for your courage and for your strength.
The Sahel region has suffered escalating violent attacks by militants linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. Thousands have been killed and millions displaced. Jolle criticized the international community's response.
So it is not that we are at a breaking point. We are broken. The way the international community tried to address this conflict and insecurity is broken. It is erratic, it is unequal, it is built on inherited privilege. It is subject to the whim of political leaders, and it is geared towards the interests of powerful countries, including my own, at the expense of others.
The refugees in Gudubu who escaped insecurity in Mali have found similar circumstances in Burkina Faso. Earlier this month, 132 residents of a village near the border with Niger were killed by insurgents. Cisse fled Mali in 2012 and now lives in the camp with his 26 family members.
Since I arrived in Burkina Faso, I'm afraid even in Gadubu. We don't sleep at night. It's really hard. Burkina, as well as Mali, is unstable.
Around 1.2 million people are displaced due to the violence in Burkina Faso, which also hosts 22,000 Malian refugees, 11,000 of them at Gadubu.
That was Nega Chile of Reuters reporting. In a report released this month, the World Bank is predicting that Zimbabwe's economy will recover 3.9% this year, even as the country sees an alarming spike in poverty levels, especially in urban areas. The report says a record 7.9 million Zimbabweans are extremely poor, earning less than $30 a month. But as Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare, the government says good rains will help lift the agro-based economy with a bumper harvest.
41-year-old Richard Luzani is one of many unemployed Zimbabweans hoping the economy will recover and the pandemic will end soon. Each day he sells water in Heathcliff, one of the poorest suburbs of Harare, with his 58-year-old father, Luzani.
I wish I could get any formal job. I'm just barely making a living from this hustle of selling water so that my family can survive. But so far, everything is down.
He says on a good day, they go home with $5 each, other days with nothing at all. A World Bank report says Zimbabweans living in rural areas such as 40-year-old Tafadzwa Gamanya are doing better than their counterparts in the urban areas thanks to subsistence farming.
I have maize and sweet potatoes. My peas are at flowering stage. I sell my vegetables to get money for sugar, for tea which we have with sweet potatoes. Our maize is enough for this year. We have nothing more to ask or cry for.
Last week, President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government said the number of food insecure Zimbabweans had drastically fallen because of the good rains the country had in the 2020-2021 agriculture season. Mukami Kariuki, who heads the World Bank in Zimbabwe, says the country's economy could recover faster depending on how the pandemic and the regional economy perform.
So overall, we note that the recovery of the economy is on a positive trend, and if sustained, this momentum will impact positively on the lives and livelihoods of the people of Zimbabwe.
An upward swing would be welcome news for Richard Luzani and millions of Zimbabweans like him. The World Bank reports 49% of the country's population now lives in the poverty due to both the pandemic and the country's ailing economy. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Nigeria's women activists were on the front line in last year's mass protests against police brutality, but they say they do not always get the same recognition as their male counterparts. From Abuja, reporter Timothy Obiezu looks at the role of Nigerian women activists.
Nigerian activist Aisha Yesufu addresses a pressing national issue with her online listeners: equity and improved conditions in Nigeria. Yesufu has been an activist since she was in school nearly 3 decades ago, but it's not been easy.
I'm not that typical person that you see coming out to make demands. Here I am, I'm a Muslim, I'm a woman, I wear hijab, and then it's like, oh, you're not supposed to speak as a Muslim. That's why a lot of people look at it.
Women like Yesufu are pressing on with their cause, despite biases and even threats. In 2014, she became prominent for co-founding the Bring Back Our Girls BBOG movement, a group that raised global awareness demanding the release of 276 girls kidnapped by Boko Haram in northern Nigeria. Last October, she also took part in the End SARS protests against police brutality. A photo of her kneeling and pointing her clenched fist into the air against heavily armed police officials became the movement's symbol.
The police were shooting at me. I literally thought I was going to die. Literally. The only thing that I said to God was that, God, please let it be a clean thing. Let whoever's bullet is going to touch me, let it just be straight through the heart. Let me fall dead, because I wouldn't want to be on the floor in pain while some policemen or women will be standing over me and gloating.
Yesufu's resilience has inspired many other women in Nigeria. The End SARS protests led to an increasing number of women organizing and leading street demonstrations. Among them, 22-year-old Rinu Udwala, a leader of the protests in Lagos.
I'm constantly reminded that as a female growing up in Nigeria, I only need to be seen and not heard. So I fight each day to use my voice and platform to talk about issues affecting my society.
Nigerian culture, as elsewhere in Africa, is highly patriarchal, but things are changing gradually. Last month, Nigeria's Women's Affairs Minister moved for a constitutional review that would give women up to 35% representation in public offices. The current figure is just 7%. Education is the reason more women are finding their voices, says Vivian Belong, founder of Social Action Nigeria.
It better exposes us to the rights and wrongs that's been going on. And not just that it exposes us, it also kind of gives us a kind of confidence that impossibility does not exist, and that convention, can always be challenged.
Belong says it will take a major change before women are perceived as equals in Nigeria, something she says will not happen soon. But activists like Yesufu and Udwala vow to continue to push past restrictive societal norms. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Coming up, a non-profit fights against avoidable blindness around the world. We'll be right back.
Be sure to join me on the next Straight Talk Africa. We'll take you to the movies as internet streaming giants battle for top billing and online audiences across Africa. We ask who's winning and who's watching. We'll also look at the growing demand for homemade stories by Africans, for Africans, and about Africans. We'll have it all right here on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Welcome back to Africa 54. At least 2.2 billion people in the world have partial or no eyesight, and almost half of them could have been prevented, according to the World Health Organization. Experts say vision impairment occurs for various reasons, depending on how much access people have to information and eye care services. The leading causes of blindness and loss of eyesight worldwide include cataract, glaucoma, uncorrected refractive error, as well as neglected tropical diseases, river blindness, and trachoma. Since 1982, the non-profit Flying Eye Hospital, Orbis International, has been traveling the world to deliver training to healthcare workers, provide quality eye care services, and fight avoidable blindness. Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu spoke with Dr. Hunter Charwick, a global ophthalmologist and vice president of clinical services and technologies at Orbis.
Orbis International is a nonprofit NGO that goes around the world treating avoidable blindness. We're exclusively focused on preserving eye health for children, for families, and communities. So the vast majority of the world's vision loss can be prevented or cured. And 90% of that is in low to middle income countries. And it sets up this vicious cycle of poverty and blindness, which Orbis can come in and in a 10 or 20 minute surgery, turn that into a virtuous cycle, getting someone out of the home, back into the workplace, back to school. If someone is completely blind, where they don't even see a light being shined into their eyes, that is total blindness or no light perception.
When is someone considered legally blind versus someone who is
considered blind?
Legal blindness is when they really can't see that big E on the chart. Their vision in their better seeing eye is 20/200, which means that a normal person with good sight sees something at 200 feet, but this person needs to come to 20 feet to be able to see the same image. So legal blindness is something very real. You could imagine if you couldn't see that big E on the chart, you can't drive a car, you can't work at a computer.
Talk to us about some of those infectious diseases that cause blindness. You mentioned trachoma,
Yes,
river blindness, or coxsacaiasis is one of them. And
Yes,
the incidence of such diseases in low and middle income country, and how much of a burden it is.
So yes, that's what I've spent my life trying to answer. The good news is all of those diseases are coming down. We're getting better at recognizing, treating, educating, and distributing the treatments. Examples of avoidable blindness, river blindness, and trachoma. My goal is before I die to see both of those diseases off the face of the earth. Some people in a lot of the places where we work think that it's a natural part of aging. It is not. So one of the things is awareness and education. 2 is access. How far do they live to an eye clinic? What is their understanding and trust, and what are the results from that eye clinic? What are the costs, and do they have the technologies to treat? And so Orbis works on all of those to build awareness, to build education, to build quality results, and to install and deliver the best technologies in the communities where it's sustainable.
So Dr. Hunter, at what point should someone who is experiencing vision loss gradually be concerned about completely losing their sight?
If you are experiencing any vision loss, you should see an eye health professional. Even if you have normal or perfect vision and no vision complaints, you should have regular eye exams, especially if you have diabetes, a family history of blindness, or trauma to the eye. So one of the things I tell people, don't wait till you start experiencing vision loss.
I have a question about glasses. It seems like some people have complained about the fact that when they started to lose their vision and they started to wear glasses, their vision became worse. Is there such a thing as glasses weakening someone's vision?
So no, it's not that if you start wearing glasses, you get weaker and weaker. It's that the eye continues to have this problem with myopia. So you're treating it. And so one of the things I tell everyone is don't not wear your glasses because you're worried that your eyes are going to get weak. It's not like your eyes are muscles that you take to the gym, and if you stop working out, they get weaker. Children, if they experience vision loss, if they don't get the fully developed pathways for vision, even later in life, they may never get full vision.
What sorts of impact have you made on the ground in this mission to reverse the incidence of avoidable blindness in lower income countries, particularly in Africa?
Right now, today, we are doing the first ever clinical trial for artificial intelligence in the country of Rwanda. Even in rural areas of Rwanda, we're able to give the highest level of artificial intelligence care that you'd have in New York City, London, Tokyo. It's amazing how exciting the world has been connected. People don't realize women are disproportionately affected with avoidable blindness. And women, especially the care providers with children, are at higher risk of trachoma. And we know that if you take out the mother, the child, that's a huge burden. So for us, we really focus on gender, we're focused on human resource development, and the technology.
And if you were to leave us with some tips to take better care of our eyes on a daily basis, what would you say, a couple of steps?
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Wearing sunglasses, not only to prevent from the UV light, but also in case there's a trauma or an accident. I can tell you, I go all around the world and I meet with diabetic patients, and they say, no one told me about my eyes. Being educated, regular eye checks, especially if you have a family history of glaucoma or blindness, or you yourself are a diabetic.
That was Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Modu speaking with Dr. Hunter Cherwick, a global ophthalmologist and vice president of clinical services and technologies at Orbis International. In northern Cameroon's refugee camps, fighting over natural resources between host communities and mostly Nigerian refugees has caused tensions and environmental damage. Local groups, with the support of the UN's refugee agency, are working to reduce conflict and improve their ecology by reforesting in and around the camps. Anzwaku in Minawao, Cameroon, has this report narrated by Moki Edwin Kinzeka.
Nigerian refugee Mariamo Andrawos cooks with charcoal she makes herself at Minawao camp, her home for the past 5 years in northern Cameroon.
To find wood, we had to go into the bush. And even in the bush, it was not easy. We couldn't cut wood. People chased us. They confiscated our equipment, our tools.
The Minawao area hosts about 118,000 Nigerians who, since 2014, have been fleeing unrest caused by Nigerian militant Islamist group Boko Haram. The number of refugees in the area has further strained natural resources like wood for cooking, creating tensions between the host community.
Before the arrival of the refugees, these people paid 100 francs for a bundle of wood. Now they can't even find the wood. Even with 1,000 francs, you can't get it.
To reduce the tensions and restore the ecology, the UN's refugee agency and local aid groups are reforesting around the camp.
According to my observation, the reforestation is more accentuated in the refugee camp. Outside the camp, there is reforestation, but it is not enough. It is necessary to reforest the whole area. Wherever the host population suffers, everything must be reforested.
The UNHCR says in the past 5 years, they have so far planted more than 500,000 seedlings. They are also teaching refugees and locals renewable cooking fuel options, such as making charcoal for household waste.
Des cuisinières solaires. Donc c'est un système aussi que nous allons.
Solar stoves? It is a system that we are going to experiment with in the camp. If we see that it can work very well, why not popularize them so that refugees can start cooking with solar energy?
La cuisine avec l'énergie solaire.
Meanwhile, Nigerian refugees like Andrawos can make and sell the household waste coal to earn money while helping to save trees. Andrawos has used her profits to start a small goat breeding farm. For Anzwanka in Minawao, Cameroon, Moki Edwin Kinzeka for VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.